I think I am gonna go ahead and get started. How is everyone's Pyohio going? That's great. Excellent. I'm excited. So we are now going to have our Saturday afternoon keynote. I'm going to introduce to you Jessica Garson, who is a Python programmer, educator, and artist. She currently works at Elastic as a senior developer advocate. Previously, she was at Twitter for 4 years, working in developer relations, and she's spoken at conferences all over the globe, ranging from PyCon US to Write the Docs. She did a jam session lightning talk at PyCon in 2019, I believe, that led to her speaking at Pyohio. She's spoken here multiple times, always bringing her expertise and passions to the stage. She considers Pyohio to be her favorite conference. Jessica has a cat named Poot, who I am told is very fuzzy. She's getting married in the penguin overhang at the New England Aquarium. She's been running a lot lately, and in her spare time, she uses code and modular synthesizers to make music and audio reactive video art. She's really interested in creating modern command line experiences and figuring out what that looks like. And finally, she loves doing live demos, which is good because she's about to do one for us today. Please welcome Jessica to the stage.
How's everyone doing? Happy Pyohio. Hold on one second. I'm just gonna change something really quickly. I always can't decide if I want to do like screen mirroring or not. I think I'm gonna not. So hold on one second. Actually, let's just keep it. How's everyone doing? Welcome to Pyohio. I'm here to talk with you about something I've been thinking about a lot lately, which is the role and the future of community in the age of AI. I entitled this presentation The Right Vibe, based on what it's like to vibe code. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, cool, awesome. And I've been thinking a lot about vibe coding. Can anybody tell me what vibe coding is? Okay, cool, I love that. I think about it as you're just gonna let AI take the wheel. It is basically ceding your own control as a developer to AI tools. It's letting AI be in control. And so we're going to talk about the impacts of that on our community. And yeah, my name is Jessica Garson. I am a senior developer advocate at Elastic. I can be found most places on the internet at Jessica Garson. And I can be found on Mastodon at jessicagarson@macaw.social. So all my code and resources can be found on my GitHub. So if you want to take a picture of this, if you want to follow along, you could do so. I don't know if this is going to work, so this is really fun. So I love, as Kattni said, I love live adventures. If you've seen any of my talks before, you've probably seen my favorite meme, which is Pikachu clutching a battery. I like when I give demos for it to feel real and for it to feel alive. So yeah, we can get started with this. So we're going to do some coding with a vibe coding tool called Windsurf. Was anybody in William's talk from this morning? Anybody? Cool, a couple of hands are being raised. I was there. And what was really cool about that is that William did a really great job of kind of demystifying the AI agents that make programming tools like Windsurf happen. He described basically what's going on under the hood. And so if you want to know how this works, I highly suggest you watch William's talk from earlier. And hold on one second. I'm going to stop sharing here. Cool. And then I'm going to pull up Windsurf. Having a little bit of technical difficulties. Cool. All right, I'm going to stop the screen mirroring. Yay. Yay for technical difficulties, always. OK, we're going to do screen mirroring. This is always like the hardest part, is the, cool. I want to stop mirroring. All right, so how many people have used a tool like Windsurf before? Anybody? Okay, cool. I see some hands being raised. So we can ask it some questions, which is super fun. So we're going to do what all good programmers do, which is cut and paste. So from here, we're just going to do Command-C, go back to Windsurf. And so from here, we're going to ask it to make a straightforward Flask app. So we're going to So it is going ahead and doing that, which is pretty cool. Everybody could see this happening? And because I don't know what's going to happen, it's like, do you want to create a new version? So I'm going to say yes. Yes. Create new. Cool. It's generating. It's planning. All right, cool. So it's generating and it's thinking. And this is one of the things I find really fun, is I realize while I'm doing this that it also actually like writes code, which is kind of cool. And I'm a deep AI skeptic. I just started using this tool to prep for this talk. And I was very skeptical of it. But one of the things that surprised me was how it kind of just ended up working. And I was like, wow, okay, cool. AI tools are actually like thinking about things and they're working. But it doesn't always work exactly as planned. So we have to press apply everywhere and accept. And then from here, it's thinking about the edits. And we could be like, OK, cool. Let's press accept. And then let's scroll down. We're learning a little bit about the setup. And it's thinking. Cool. So from here, OK, cool. So it's generating. And it's generating some things. And now we can start running everything. So from here, we can install the requirements.txt. Yay for live demos. So we could copy here. And so from here, this should run. OK, it wants to create a virtual environment for me. All right. Ooh, no such files. Cool. Well, let's try again. This happened once before, so we're going to, OK. So it's creating our virtual environment for us. And so from here, let's copy again. And then let's paste. OK. Interesting. So this is one of the first times it didn't work, which is always the fun about live demos. So let's talk a little bit about that. Does anyone know how to turn off the screen mirroring or to turn back on the screen mirroring? Command F1. Cool. This is one of the things I love about. All right. Awesome. Yay. OK, cool. Sorry for the awkwardness, everybody. Always love live demos for this reason. So cool. So that was fun. We were experimenting with coding with Windsurf. And we tried to make a simple Flask app. And we used the prompt, can you create a straightforward Flask app that displays hello world? And we wanted it to have a modern look. And what was cool about this was that it didn't work. It was awkward. It was weird. And it reminded me that in the time that it awkwardly took me to make that, I could have made one myself. And it was cool that something happened. We got some code. It wasn't quite in the right place. We're going to try to debug later. And that's awesome. So let's think about what happens with a more complicated setup. So let's, from here, we can actually go back into Windsurf. And we can actually try to figure out what's going on. Why isn't it working? So I could say, hey, that didn't work. Why not? OK, so it says that there's some stuff that needs to be concatenated together. Cool. It's telling me that it needs to, OK, cool. So it's going to propose some changes. And we're going to come back. Yes, please write. Perfect. Cool. It's switching to write mode. Awesome. So even though we thought it was working, it wasn't. And this is something that has happened with my own code. How many people had this happen? Where you think that something's working and it's just not? And you're like, oh, wow, OK, cool. And we're going to go back to a more complicated prompt in a little bit, just kind of to keep this rolling. So we'll come back and we'll try to make it more complicated. But the question that I have is, are we programming? Does anybody know? I don't know. I also do not know if we were programming. And this is what I cannot stop thinking about, is are we programming, and what does programming mean? I used to teach at NYU, and I would often ask my students after they committed their first Hello World app if they were developers. How many people thought that they said that they were developers? Anybody? Okay, one or two people. Most people did not think that they were developers. They thought that they weren't ready yet. They thought that the definition was somebody who writes and executes code. But that's what we're doing. And so this made me think a lot about my own journey and how I made my way to the stage. So in 2015, I was in a punk band in Washington, D.C. And this is a picture of the festival, Damage City Fest. That band, our North Star for that band was to play that festival. We did not, for scheduling reasons, we did not get to play. But I always assumed I would attend. But through my own community, I was learning how to code with Hear Me Code, which is a beginner-friendly program for women who are learning how to code in their mid to late 20s. And it was kind of free community classes for women by women. I was running a meetup called Hack and Tell, and I was active in my local Pi Ladies community. And one day, I went to a Pi Ladies meetup. And what happened was they were like, hey, there's some free scholarships available for PyCon. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to get it, but like, I'll apply. It's the same weekend as Damage City, but like, I don't think that's going to happen. And I think you could probably guess what happened. Instead of going, I ended up at PyCon 2015, 10 years ago. And I think to this day about all the work that had to happen to make me attend. That I had to go to the meetup. I had to hear about the meetup. Somebody had to create a scholarship program for Pi Ladies. I had to apply. Somebody had to secure funding. So many things had to happen in the right order for me to be there. And I'm pretty sure the person who created that program has no idea that I'm here standing on this stage because of that. And so that is kind of what it feels like to build community. Many of us, this is something that this community does extremely well. We nurture relationships, we learn and grow from each other, and we really can create the communities that we want to see. Every time I come to this conference, I am reminded of what it feels like to be an active member of a community. I am always inspired, I'm always learning something new. I learned so much today. My notebook is completely full of scribbles of things I learned from everyone's talk. Even Eddie's talk right before mine, where I was like, I think I know everything. I learned like 50 new things, and that is what being part of a community is. This is one of my favorite communities. I think that the organizing team does an amazing job creating that community. And really, for me, this boils down to, this is a space for me to be the most authentic version of myself. I had no problems flubbing with my awkward setup until somebody told me about the command F1 that helped me do that. Because this is the space where I could be the most authentic version of myself. I found this Instagram post that I posted July 31st, 2018. That was my first Pyohio. And I talked about generating music with Foxdot and Python and Super Collider. And what you might not know is I was afraid of speaking publicly. And this was one of the first talks that went well. And I was like, oh my God, I did it. I'm getting good at public speaking. And because I could talk about whatever I wanted to, I was so nervous to talk about my noise music I make with code. But I knew that this community would be supportive. And how this happened was I ended up, I gave a lightning talk. I kept on going back to PyCon after my first year because I had such a good experience with the conference. And what happened was I was talking to a friend and I was like, yeah, I might make some music instead of giving a lightning talk and sign up. And I don't think it's going to get accepted because I didn't write the tools. And somebody was like, no, you should definitely do that. I've sat through lightning talks. I think a jam session would be amazing. And I was like, I don't know. And then she convinced me to do it. And I did it. And then somebody came up to me after and was like, hey, there's another conference in Ohio. It was in Cleveland that year. And they were like, do you want to come back to Ohio and come to Columbus for Pyohio? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, you should submit. And I was like, okay, cool. And I did, and I got accepted. And that was really exciting. And I think we all have our own reasons of what makes this community so special. If anybody wants to shout them out, feel free to. Connections and talking to folks. Anybody else? What you learn. Anything else? Inspiration for projects. Seeing both successes and failures for me, how honest and open everybody is about what's working, what's not working, and really how we treat each other. And to me, that makes a community a community. So, yeah. So I learned how to code in the 2010s. How many people here learned how to code in 2010s? Yeah, so I spent a lot of time cut and pasting code. And I would often, I think I shocked somebody once because they started pair programming with me, and from the get-go, I didn't even try to type anything in. I literally just Googled the thing I was looking for and then started cutting and pasting code. And that took a long time. That was like a slow, arduous process. It didn't even try to like write the code for me. And I found that like, it was never the first answer that worked. It wasn't even the second answer. It was the 5th or the 7th or even some adjustment of like the 9th that worked for me. And you know, as time went on, I learned how better debugging tools. I learned kind of how to start creating my own. And I also started taking the examples and twisting them and turning them into my own. And to be honest, that's the genesis of my creative work. I literally just took the examples, shifted them, twisted them, made them my own. But I grew very dependent on this. How many people have looked up on Stack Overflow the same thing over and over and over again? I look at this, what I'm showing right now, about 14 times a week. Still, to this day. And you know what? It's funny because I think I know how to do it now. But I always just need to look it up. And that's okay, having those resources and having that community. And the really cool thing about Stack Overflow is that people wrote this question and you can meet them in real life. People answered them and you can meet them. And what's really great is that, you know, there's something that you can always look up and it's always the same and you know where to find it. But I was afraid of a lot. And I read this article called Why Can't Programmers Program? Has anybody seen this before? So it's by Jeff Atwood, and it's all about being able to write a program called FizzBuzz, and it is supposed to find the true programmers, because there are apparently people who write code, and some people even who call themselves senior engineers, who don't know how to answer a simple FizzBuzz problem. And so what you're looking for is if output is divisible by 3, then it prints buzz. If output is divisible by 5, then or if output is divisible by 3, it prints fizz. And if output is divisible by 5, it prints buzz. Or if it's divisible by both, it prints FizzBuzz. And this is supposed to show you how good of a programmer you are. And you're supposed to kind of run this for interviews and things like that. And I thought it was the scariest thing in the entire world. I was so afraid of being a programmer that didn't program. Can everybody see the FizzBuzz guy? That looks like a state? No. Does not look like. Hold on, we're going to try again. Okay. Cool. So I wasn't expecting bugs this way, but that's cool. Yeah. All right, cool. That's working now. Oh, no. Okay, cool. Well, that's the FizzBuzz guy that I was most afraid of. He looks like a state, right? Yeah. And I was very nervous that I would always be a programmer that didn't program. And so every time I gave a talk, I would live code because I wanted you to know that I knew how to program. And it took me a long time to develop the vulnerability to be able to come up and have my first demo fail. And that's what the beauty of kind of having this community is that we're able to kind of, by learning and growing from each other, we can stop being afraid of FizzBuzz. And actually, I actually kind of like FizzBuzz now, and I love like algorithm questions on interviews and stuff, because I saw a talk from somebody who often attends this conference about how to solve the programming challenges. And because of that support from the community, I was able to grow and eventually get to the point where I could pass technical interviews, and I wasn't so scared of our FizzBuzz friend anymore. So what if I learned how to code in 2025? Is there anyone here who's learned how to code now, this year? Cool, awesome, a couple of people, yeah. Was it the same as what I described or not? So I think I would use AI. And I think I might be able to get to where I wanted to go sooner. I actually believe that if I had the tools, it wouldn't have been so slow for me to program. I'm going to confess something. It took me from the year that I wrote a Hello World program to the year that I deployed my first web application. That was a year. And that was a year of constantly trying to do that. And I think if I could have gotten past that hump sooner, it would have been different. And so I think a lot about what it's like to code now. I think it would be a greater acceleration to being able to create code that seems right. And so I keep coming back to this question. I asked this at the beginning, which is, are we still programming if everything is abstracted away? And I think the answer is yes. I think every generation has ways that they are going to be learning and growing and creating new things. And I believe that the answer to this question is that you still are programming, even if you're vibe coding. So what does it feel like to code with AI? Anybody who's coded with AI, do you want to chime in? Frustrating, OK. It does feel like reading someone else's code. That is yeah, it does feel like that. To me, it feels like, how many people have seen The Secret World of Alex Mack? OK, a couple of hands are being raised. That's a show from when I was a teenager, so sometime in the early 2000s. And it was a show about a teenager who got magical powers one day but didn't quite know how to use it, and all these awkward shenanigans would happen because of that. And that's what it feels like. It's like I have this thing, but I don't know what to do with it. And I'm trying to run a simple hello world prompt, and I think and I have more confidence because I'm like, yeah, but I think I could have gotten that up and running faster if I was just coding a hello world app. And so that's something that I spend a lot of time thinking of. So let's take a look. Let's go back and take a look at the code, and let's see what's going on. So, OK, would you like to switch to write mode? I think I have to go into here. All right, cool. Learning something new. Yes. Cool. Hopefully this generates. OK, it's trying to create a Flask app. All right, maybe it's working. Maybe not. We have some times to come back to it and try to figure it out. Various points throughout this presentation. I switch. So every test run I have had has had an issue. Not as big as this one, but every single test run has had an issue. I work at Elastic, so one of my ideas for the second demo was going to be to put Elasticsearch in there so I could be able to tell you if things were wrong. This one tried to make up Elasticsearch exemption, which does not exist. And so I was like, what is this? Other issues had me have just completely insecure Elasticsearch instances, which are bad, things that you don't want to happen. But one of the things I thought was really interesting was nowadays, this is from Streamlit, which is one of my early test runs. I think the first one I did use Streamlit. It also suggested a talk that I had already given, which was weird. But yeah, from there, it tells you that you could copy your error, which is really helpful for debugging. You can ask Google, or you can ask ChatGPT. And one of the things I think is really interesting is that asking ChatGPT isn't always helpful. So it doesn't feel so great to debug with AI. I heard somebody say that it's frustrating. On one hand, you have this kind of extra set of eyes, which is great sometimes because you don't know where it is and what the problem is. And have you ever lost a pair of glasses and you think you know where it is, but you don't really know? It's kind of that same thing sometimes with code. So just having a second set of eyes, even if it's AI eyes, can be helpful. But also, it sometimes like gets stuck in the past. I know that early versions of my testing had in there like Elasticsearch 8.11. We're now on Elasticsearch 8.19. Early versions had outdated versions of Flask that we're no longer using for security reasons. It gets stuck in the past very easily. It also gets stuck in loops where it just feels like you're asking it the same thing. You're like, no, no, fix this. This is what I want. Fix it. Fix it. Please fix it. I really want this code to work. And that can be frustrating, and it can be hard to parse sometimes. So yeah, with AI, debugging is complicated and hard. It also lies to you. So Kattni, thank you for asking me for a description of my performance. I took a look at this. Kattni was like, hey, can you send me a description of what it's like to play and what it's like to attend a Messiga Arson show? Messiga Arson is my alias. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I Googled my name to find like my bio. And instead I found an AI overview about myself. One that is quite false. Well, parts of it are. I do create live coding and live sampling. I incorporate sample screams into my art. I am not an electrical engineer. I do focus on creating interfaces and new ways to manipulate sound beyond traditional conventional music tools. I did play Harvestworks Digital Media Arts Center. Not anymore. I'm not really like a danceable live coder anymore, but I used to do that, so sure, that's cool. I performed at various events and algo raves, sure, that's true. But the next sentence, arson is involved in collaborative projects, that's all false, but my friend did that, so that's kind of cool, and I think I know where that came from. And then I apparently composed a score for a James Franco film. I wish that was true, but like maybe AI will will that into existence. I don't know. And I am working on a new album with my friend Garrett DeBlock. Unfortunately, I am actually setting aside time to finish it next week, so I am excited, I guess, but it is not finished yet. I've also found myself recently kind of taking patterns from AI and not knowing. So before kind of embarking on this project to learn about Windsurf and to learn how to do this, I actually found myself using more emojis because a lot of my coworkers were using emojis. And then as soon as I started this project, I was like, oh, I think I know what's happening. Because I just started copying them because I was like, yeah, having a check and having an X, that's so cool. I should do that. And I think it's interesting the way that we learn from AI as opposed to AI learning from us. And one of the things I think about all the time is that broken code isn't always bad. I learned so much from the things that didn't work. I've already learned so much from like showing you I didn't know that there was a difference between write and chat mode until just now. Broken code teaches us lessons, and broken code isn't always a bad thing. It can be a really helpful signpost. I know at the end of every project, I know when I'm about to ship something new, I know it's coming because the bugs become so easy. I'm like, oh, okay, line 25. I have this like intimate awareness of what's going on with my code, and I'm like, yeah, cool, I got it. It's coming close. I'm almost there. And having that like great chase down of errors, that's how you know you're close, because that's when things are working. And I use this a lot for my own art. I may show you some of this soon. But I have this Scream 2 file, and from here, this is how I manipulate my own screams. Now, you should never do this. The playback rate is way too high. But I love the audio glitches that it makes. It just sounds amazing, and it's exactly what I want. I am using bugs that I use downsampling and super collider a lot in my art. I make audio glitches. I love exploiting the things that don't work because that's where creativity comes from. And so again, bugs are not always bad. Bugs teach us a lot, and bugs give us, every bug is a talk that could be given at this very conference. And my favorite talk on the subject is called How to Love Your Bugs. And it's from PyCon Cleveland 2018. It is in my repository, but it talks a lot about social bugs and bugs where you are able to have conversations with your coworkers about it, or that like unlikely bugs are not always things that are bad. And they do happen. Even the most unlikely bugs that come from someone else's code, they can happen. And that is so exciting. And so when we think about AI and we think about a world where we're trying to get away from having bugs, what are we losing? And so I think about this all the time because I don't have the time to build everything I want to build. I want to make my own live coding framework in Python. I want to make my own programming language. There are so many things that I want to do, but I don't have the time to do everything. And so this is where kind of AI comes in. And you're like, wait, can AI help me? Can AI give me superpowers? And the truth is I don't know. I haven't found it to be as productive as I thought it was going to be. And I actually found a study that showed the same. So apparently, they took a look at early 2015 AI, and they found that while people think that there is going to be more of a speed up, they actually have a slowdown of up to 40%, which is pretty crazy when we think about it. And I think a lot of that time is going towards debugging. And for many of us, coding, not even if you're doing creative coding, but coding in general is a creative outlet. Solving problems, finding new ways. Every bug that I have, I'm like, oh my God, this thing happened, and like it didn't, and like I had this extra dash, and I didn't know why I had this extra dash, and I learned this thing. Even at the beginning of this talk, I just learned something really awesome. I had no idea about Windsurf. So, for many of us, coding is a creative process. And one of the things I've been thinking about is kind of the cognitive effect of not being able to just write things on your own and solve things in the way. And so there's been some studies coming out about your brain on ChatGPT and what that looks like and the cognitive load that you lose from kind of getting used to some of these tools and not being able to have the same sort of problem solving and creativity that you used in the past. There's also a lot of security considerations. So you might not think that what you do for a living is interesting or even something that anybody would want to know, but you don't know what someone else is going to find extremely valuable. So when you're sending data and you're asking it all these questions, you really have to think about who's seeing this data. And this is something I can't stop thinking about. There is a lot of security considerations, over-reliance, prompt injection. There are lots of things that can go wrong. And even Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI, warned users not to trust ChatGPT with their own personal data. And so there's a lot to think about. You also might have noticed that tokens were being used when I was coding earlier, or coding. I'm not sure if I was coding or not. This is something I think about because those tokens are not free. You have to pay for them. And so I've been thinking a lot about the economic impacts of this and the economic equality of that. Because when you create code in this way, not everyone has the same access to being able to kind of go through tons of tokens. I think I went through thousands of tokens just now. And that is not cheap. And so when we're thinking about creating accessible code, we really need to think about who will have access to be able to do this. And let's be, oh no, hold on, okay. Let's be real about when we are using AI. I actually had this the other day with a coworker where they were telling me they weren't using AI for something, and I was like, oh no, I've been vibe coding. I think I know you are. And I think if we are using it, we have to disclose that. We have to be honest with our community. We have to be transparent, and we have to be real with ourselves. I know that when I first started using tools like this, I was like, oh no, I don't want to talk about that. Like, I'm just asking it for like, why I can't merge this thing or why I'm having this command line issue. But we need to talk about that, and we need to talk about what's working and what's not working. So share your experiments. Share the things that are like spectacularly failing. Share the things that are working too. And I think there's actually, where I kind of land on all of this is, I think there's room for kind of a human and AI connection. And for that sort of collaboration. I think that's where that works the best. So I went to a talk last week on code reviews by Adrienne, who wrote Looks Good to Me, which is a book about how to do code reviews. And she was like, the first pass by AI, that's not so bad if you want to do your first pass of a code review, because you might find things. Don't say everything that AI says, and make sure you test and you learn that everything it's saying is true. But it's not a bad way to kind of get started and kickstart code reviews. I hate commenting code. If you know me, you know that I hate commenting code. I just don't like doing it. Having AI do it for you, that's something that you can do. And that's something that's really helpful. Taking a step back on that, though, you want to make sure that it doesn't change your code. I found that even though I thought it was commenting my code, it's changed my code more than I thought it would. And I also think that AI-generated tests are better than no tests in a software environment. However, you want to make sure you check it and that the tests are actually working in the way you think they are. So let's check in with our code. Let's see if we can make the hello world. OK, so we're going to do some accept in. Cool. All right. All right, looks like it did work. So let's check in. Let's copy. All right, let's see. I'm going to do. All right, hello, Pyohio. And yay for live demos that actually work. So we're going to try to expand this because we have a couple more minutes, I believe. Cool. So can I expand the application to use vector search? Eddie just talked about vector search, so I wanted to talk about this too. I already have set my environment variables in my terminal for Elasticsearch host and API, Elasticsearch API key. Let's see if this works. OK, cool. Yeah, so let's try yay for live coding. Yeah, let's accept all. All right, cool. All right, so let's go back into the slides. So one of the things is I feel like this feels like casting magic spells. Like it may or may not work every time that I use AI to write code. And even just now, like I was like, I think this is going to work. I could prompt in the right way, and it's going to work, and it doesn't. And I feel kind of like I'm just building my powers when I do this. But the truth is with all of the test runs, I had to use the right newest model. I had to use Claude 4. Claude 3.7 had issues. Some of the freer models had issues. You have to do everything in the right order. You have to prompt it in the right way. And this made me think a little bit about natural language programming. How many people were here for kind of the early 1990s and the beginning of Python? Any hands? OK, a couple of hands. So my mom was learning how to code when I was a teenager. And she was told that Pascal was the language to learn, and it was just language, and she was going to be able to write code. And it turned out that Pascal was a little bit harder for her. And so for a long time, I really wanted to write a programming language for her. I wanted to be able to, I found out that there's a trick within the parser and that you can have English compile, and it could be so cool. And I've thought about taking like a year off work and building this programming language for my mom. And there's a lot of languages that have tried to do this. HyperTalk in 1987. How many people have seen this before? Can anybody tell me what this is? OK. Well, the point is that it looks very much like English. It started from Hypercube, and it was kind of one of the first languages, programming languages, that really tried to look like the English language. And it tried to be easy and readable. There's also AppleScript in 1993, which is a little bit simpler. Tell application, Microsoft Word, quit, and tell. And it's also similar to Python, and some of the other languages also have kind of their start in kind of trying to be more. Cobalt, I think, started this way too, trying to be closer to the English language. This is not new. And so I was talking about this experience I had before PyTexas, where I was like, I had demo code that was supposed to work, and it wasn't working, and I was testing obsessively, and I was like, let me just ask AI for help. And AI took me down this weird loop for about an hour, telling me I have a deep configuration issue. And then I realized what the issue was, so I stopped talking to AI, and I realized that I just forgot to install SQL Alchemy, an error that I've had a million times. And I was like, man, I probably didn't prompt this right. Like, it didn't get the right answer. And so this made me think of this cartoon, which is someday we won't even need coders anymore. We will be able to just write the specification, and the program will write itself. Oh, wow, you're right. We will be able to write a comprehensive and precise spec, and bam, we won't need programmers anymore. And do you know the industry term for a project specification that is comprehensive and precise enough to generate a program? Code. It's called code. And I think about this a lot when it comes to prompting and things like that, because for many of us, we are writing code, but we don't even know it that we are. And that's kind of something that's super cool and interesting. But we're still writing code. So there are many new programmers that are just entering the industry, and they are using vibe coding tools. And we want them to have just as inclusive of an environment that all of us had here. That we want to make sure that we are still welcoming to everybody who is coming, who is using Python for the first time through a tool like Windsurf or Cursor or Lovable, or people who have been here trying to pick up these tools, or people who never want to use these tools ever again, like myself. But there are so many new developers, and we want to make sure that they're having an inclusive experience. And this has made me think a lot about community. So vibe coding, it feels like a solo activity. It feels very isolating. I know when I was in my hotel room yesterday trying to make this work, I was just alone and not talking to anybody. I wasn't talking to the people in the room that have become my community over the years, the people that I asked for help. And so I think that new developers who are coming in from the vibe coding world, they're going to need the Python community more than ever before. And one of the things I keep thinking about is being able to get to where you're going, always a good thing. And I don't know if that's true, because you're always going to get bugs. There's always going to be a point where things don't go as planned. Even in this talk, there have been points where things did not go as planned. And being able to face some of those issues, especially some of those big infrastructure issues, faster might not be good. And so people are going to need a lot of support as they're coming in and they're getting to that acceleration point much faster. And so for many of us, we're going to be able to be mentors and be honest, and spaces like this are going to be really important. And I've noticed that some of the bugs I get from AI tools, they're very odd. They're very strange. They pick up weird points, they pick up things, and maybe, it depends on the model you're using, and depends on the prompting, but I've gotten some of the weirdest bugs I've ever gotten. And we're going to need to talk about that. We're going to need to have presentations at conferences such as Pyohio on some of how we're solving the very odd bugs, because there will always be a point where you're going to have to kind of solve things and be creative and find new ways. So spaces like this are more important than ever before. So I love this community, and this community has done a lot for me. I am going to try. Do I have a minute to see if my demo worked? Okay, cool. Thanks, y'all. All right, we're going to accept a bunch of things. Cool, we're accepting all. I actually don't even, it's funny. The funny thing about programming in this way is that I don't even know what it's supposed to be doing. Cool, so now it is checking. I like when demos work at the end. Okay, generating. This always takes longer than you think it's going to take. So it's completing 6 items. All right, let's try to run this. Cool, and all right, it's gonna tell us what we need to do. Cool, so let's see if it ran. Moment of truth, live demos. Oh no, cool. So yeah, let's try. We'll see. Is this working? Probably not. That's cool though. That's the fun. Yeah, it's true. It might be running. Yeah, I did not. That is typically how that goes. And I think I know how to solve that, but I'll just post everything later of what it looks like. But yeah, I did not stop the old one. I can also change the port too. That's another fun thing. We could try that actually. So we could actually I run things a little bit more modern now. So Flask run, and I think it's -P, right? Yeah, let's do 8,000. I think. Did somebody say something? Yeah. No, I figured that out too. And that's kind of the fun thing about it is like when I have, cool. I think this may have worked. Let's see. Let's go. We're going to go and take a look at both versions in my browser. Let's do 8,000. Nah, that did not work. But we could try localhost 5,000 and see if that did. Yay for live demos. Looks like it's still the same as it was. So yeah, cool. Well, thank you all for watching my And also the fun of this was that I got to show you that code doesn't always have to work. So thanks you all.